Hey guys, in this video we are going to be talking about a student a student essay, and I am going to be showing you a student example. I'm going to go through and basically annotate this example for you guys and show you the things that you both need to be doing and don't need to be doing, and just kind of give you a little bit of understanding. This essay was really a pretty good essay. It was written over the Sniper several years ago. Now that you've read the Sniper, it should give you some background and understanding, and hopefully it will help you write your 451 essay. So let's get started. First thing up here, she has her heading. You need to make sure that you include your complete heading. In a previous video, or maybe an upcoming video, at this point I've made so many, I don't know which order they're coming in anymore. But in one of the videos, you were shown how to set up your paper. And so it specifically shows you how to do all of this information. You need to make sure that it is included and that basically it looks like what you see here. Also notice there is no page number up here in the top screen on the right, or in the top part of the essay. You do want a page number on the next pages, which I will show you her next page in just a minute. But you do want a page number in the following pages, but you do not want a page number on the first page. In the video that I was just talking about, it tells you how to do this and how to make sure this page number doesn't show up on this first page. If you need help with this, just let me know and I'll help you. Some other features as far as the setup. Notice that she has indented her paragraphs. You need to indent your paragraphs as well. If you do not indent them, you will lose points. You also don't need a lot of spacing between paragraphs. Basically, when you get to the end of the line, you need to hit enter one time. That's it. If you have a ton of spacing right there, I'm literally going to write it, and I'm going to write it just like this. Too much spacing. Like, it's going to look just like that on your paper. So please make sure you don't have a whole bunch of extra spacing you don't need. I realize that a lot of you guys do this to try and make your paper longer. You're going to lose points for the length, and then you're going to lose points for having too much spacing. So don't lose points for both things. Just let the length go. Now, granted, if you want the full credit, you need to hit those 2 pages, but adding in a bunch of extra spacing isn't going to make it for you. All right, so the next thing I want to look at is the title. Your title does need to be in the center of the paper like this. However, this is a very just bland title. It's very basic. It tells me, yes, it's the Sniper essay. This will get you approximately 8 points, okay? But it's not going to get you those full 10 points that you're shooting for. So you want to try and make an original title. Meaning, maybe instead of putting just the Sniper, you could say, let's see, what's her thesis? Destructive Nature of Civil War. Maybe you could say war within the Sniper. And then, this is your whole title. Okay? And obviously you would have essay on there. That's an example. This one really isn't the greatest either, but just to give you an idea of the fact that you are trying to have that original title and you definitely want it to connect to your thesis in some way, then hopefully that will kind of give you that idea there. The catchier your title is, the better off you are. I will say that this is not necessarily something that you're going to need for pre-AP in the future. This is really something that you will need for college. And it really depends on what your major is. But if you look into publishing a paper or turning a paper in, typically they want that original title. So it's just good practice for you. All right, so let's dive into her paper. First off, let's talk about the intro. Because intros are hard. People struggle with them, and you have several possibilities for how you could do your intro. You could introduce the background of the author. Sorry about that. You could summarize aspects of the story. Summarize story. maybe not everything about it, but overall idea, okay? You could start with a quote. However, you need to be really careful with this. A lot of people have a tendency to do this one, and then it becomes very disjointed. Remember that if you start with a quote, it needs to be embedded. At the very least, it needs to flow with your writing. I'm going to ding you on this if you have a quote and it's completely separate. Like a lot of people want to say something like, let's find a quote down here. Dublin lay enveloped in darkness. In the anti-war short story, The Sniper, written by Liam O'Flaherty, they don't go together. They're off. You want that flow, and if you don't have that flow, then you don't need to do a quote, okay? You need that continuation of ideas. Your quote does not need to be separated out, so be careful about doing that. You can do it, but you definitely need to be careful about it. Besides these two, besides the background of the author, summary of the story, and the quote, you could also introduce your topic, your thesis topic. Okay, for instance, here she's going to be talking about Civil War. So at the beginning up here, she could introduce just the basic idea of Civil War and what Civil War is. So that is another possibility for how you could begin. Now, keep in mind that these ideas are not an end-all be-all. There are 101 ways to start a paper. So be original, be creative, think outside the box, do whatever. You could start it with a metaphor. You could start it with a simile. Say something like, war is to, okay, I don't know. I can't think of a metaphor off the top of my head. War is like winter. It shows up inevitably, but yet often kills everything in its sight. I don't know. Just as an idea, okay? So those are possibilities. So you have the idea of a metaphor, a simile, background of the author, which if you include this, remember that you need to include the MLA information about it. It needs to be included in your works cited page. Don't tell me that Bradbury, had 3 sons and 2 daughters, and he wrote this, and this. All this information that you really wouldn't know unless you looked it up without including your source. Okay, so keep that in mind. If you include a bunch of information about the author, you need to include your source, and they need to show up on your works cited page. That source information needs to show up on your works cited page. Okay, so once again, you have the background of the author, summarize the story, the overall idea. You can use a quote, but you better make sure you embed it or flow. You can introduce the topic that connects to your thesis. Or, of course, a simile or a metaphor is always great. I'm going to show you more about writing metaphors and similes, especially extended metaphors, in the future. But right now, those are all possibilities for how you can start your intro. All right, so let's look at her intro and what's going on with it. In the anti-war short story, The Sniper, written by Liam O'Flaherty, 2 snipers from 2 conflicting sides face off in a battle of guts and wits, using both their shooting skills and intelligence. So clearly, she went with the basic idea of summarizing briefly what happened in the story. That's what she goes with for her intro. Whoops. Right? This first little section right here, that's her overall idea. She's summarizing the overall story and what goes on with the story. Keep in mind, see right here where you've got the sniper and it's in these quotation marks. This is what you do with a short story. I don't know why I capitalized that T. Or a poem, or really any piece of literature, a video, a movie, whatever. The But with a book, which is what you are going to be doing, you're going to be doing a book, then it needs to be in italics. You actually don't have these. You put it in italics, okay? Please do not make me say 400 million times a book title that needs to go in italics. Many of you are going to do that. Please, 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 when you write anything about Fahrenheit 451, when you write those words, they need to go in italics. So please make sure that you have that information and that you do that when you include that information, okay? So, like I said, this first part, she just summarizes. And then she has this little, what I call a bridge, okay? So what do I mean by bridge? Let me see if I can highlight. Yep, all right. So this first section in the anti-war short story, The Sniper, written by Liam O'Flaherty, two snipers from conflicting sides face off in a battle of guts and wits using both their shooting skills and intelligence. So this is, like I said, her basic summary of the story. This is how she chose to introduce it. But now I need a bridge, a connection from this idea to her thesis. I need some way to get from here to here. So, I know I'm going to talk about Civil War. I was just talking about war. So she was just talking about war. So she continues with this idea of war. Okay? Like most wars, the battle between these two snipers, she's connecting that war to her story, is both brutal and heart-wrenching. As such, she uses transition words. I've included a handout for transition words. Transition words are your friend. If you do not use them in your writing, I guarantee I'm going to say, use transition words, use transition words, use transition words. So please use them to begin with. As such, O'Flaherty uses the sniper to suggest that war is an evil obsession. So she moves from her general idea of war into the sniper, into the idea that it's evil, right? All to set up this final statement. Anyway, an evil obsession that makes brothers turn against brothers, destroying families and achieving no greater purpose than killing the innocent. And of course, all of that is to bring her into her thesis. O'Flaherty's clever usage of setting, the situational irony, and the theme draw the audience into the true understanding of the diabolical and destructive nature of civil war. So what we have here, you've got her three things that she's going to talk about. She's going to talk about setting, she's going to talk about irony, and she's going to talk about theme. And all of it's going to connect to civil war being bad, right? So we have setting, irony, theme. Now, if you had to guess, what order do you think these would go in? Well, I can tell you. I'm going to highlight her thesis in a different color. Just to kind of make it stand out. So if you've thought about it, or maybe you haven't, the order that it would go in is pretty simple. This would be paragraph 1. This would be paragraph 2. Well, let me back that up. Hold on. This would actually be paragraph 2. This would be paragraph 3. And this would be paragraph... This would be paragraph... Well, dang it, if I can get my stuff right. This would be paragraph 3. And this would be paragraph 4. Of course, what we have going on here is that this, my intro, is actually paragraph number 1, right? So this is my whole setup of my paper right here. So just to recap, let's reread what she wrote one more time, okay? Just to kind of remind ourselves one more time of what she did here. All right? So the very first thing she does is she has this intro at the beginning. Whoops. Let's get rid of this. So she has this intro at the very, very beginning. In the anti-war short story, The Sniper, written by Liam O'Flaherty, two snipers from two conflicting sides face off in a battle of guts and wits using both their shooting skills and intelligence. Then she has a bridge. Like most wars, the battle between these two snipers is both brutal and heart-wrenching. As such, O'Flaherty uses the sniper to suggest that war is an evil obsession that makes brothers turn against brothers, destroying families and achieving no greater purpose than killing the innocent. Finally, she has that thesis statement, right? O'Flaherty's clever usage of setting, the situational irony, and the theme draw the audience into the true understanding of the diabolical and destructive nature of civil war. So her paragraph is set up into 3 parts, right? We have an intro, a bridge, and a thesis. This too is what you're trying to go for. And of course, with your thesis, you want 3 specific things you're going to focus on, and then you want a specific opinion. Okay? So now let's look at her second paragraph and what is going on there. The story takes place in Dublin, and the city is described in a way that gives off depressing, suspenseful, and pessimistic images. Just right off the bat, this is excellent diction, especially pessimistic. You are shooting for this idea. You want upper level diction all the way through, okay? And what is she talking about to begin with? The setting. Because why? Right up here, the first thing she's supposed to talk about is the setting, and so it is. The author dedicates the entire first paragraph to describe the setting and to illustrate the atmosphere of the story. This is a transition where she talks about this first part with the story. This is a transition from her thesis to what she's going to talk about in this paragraph. It's also known as a topic sentence. So I know in this paragraph right here that she is going to be talking about where it takes place and the fact that it's depressing, suspenseful, and pessimistic. Overall, it's just bad, is what she's going to be telling us, except with upper level diction, of course. The author dedicates the entire first paragraph to describe the setting and to illustrate, good diction, the atmosphere of the story. Atmospheres connects back to setting. The dark, ominous scene as Dublin lay enveloped in darkness. This is excellent. What does she do here? She has created an embedded quote. Okay? If we didn't have this quotation mark and this comma, you wouldn't be able to tell where her writing ended and the quotes began. That's what you're going for, guys. The dark, ominous scene as Dublin lay enveloped in darkness opens the story with a sense of despair. Notice she doesn't have this repetition. She's not just saying it's depressing over again. She's not just saying it's sad over and over again. She's changing up her wording, but all of these words, depressing, despair, pessimistic, ominous, essentially they all are bad. And they all mean basically the same thing. So you want to go for this, change up your wording. The word darkness. Now she's focusing on the quote. What does she have here? She has an esse. Essentially, that is what's going on here. Is this right here is just one big esse. And let me explain. Okay? one big essay. First, we have our first A, which is, I always call it brainstorming, but essentially it is your topic sentence, okay? Your answer to your thesis, right? This is where I'm going to reconnect back to my thesis, and I'm going to start talking to my reader about how and what I'm going to be talking about, okay? I'm going to be talking about the place, and I'm going to be talking about the fact that it's bad, right? So there's the beginning of my essay. Now, let's look at the second portion of your essay. Right here, where it says the atmosphere the author dedicates the entire first paragraph to, describes the setting and to illustrate the atmosphere of the story. The dark, ominous scene. This is my support. Remember? My support. The dark, ominous scene, as Dublin lay enveloped in darkness, opens the story with a sense of despair. So this one little line, I really wrote that too long. This one little line is my E, my evidence. No, I'm sorry. Not my E. Sorry, guys. My S, my evidence, my support. Now, what's the rest of this? The rest of this is my E. This is where I explain. If you are doing a good job of analyzing your piece of literature, analyzing your quote, then guys, this is the size that you're looking at for explanation. You're not focusing on just small stuff. And look at how much she breaks it down. She focuses on small sections because the word darkness is in her quote. The word darkness instantly creates a sense of insecurity and mystery in the reader's minds. No first person. She doesn't say us. And as well as a suspenseful atmosphere. I would probably cut this out and just say as well as a suspenseful atmosphere. The sentence, the dim light of the moon, shown this, not good. Furthermore, when the reader sees the dim light of the moon shone through fleecy clouds, casting a pale light, something of that nature. That actually doesn't fit when I read the rest of it, but you get the idea. You definitely don't want to say the sentence. I guarantee I dinged her for that. So yet another example would be when the dim light of the moon shone through fleecy clouds, casting a pale light, transmitting a feeling of loneliness and depression, since moon is often thought of as lonely in the high end of the sky. Around the beleaguered four courts, the heavy guns roared. Here and there through the city, machine guns and rifles broke silence of the night, spasmodically like dogs barking on a lone farm. Good job with her in-text citation. The author identifies Dublin as dangerous and an insecure place full of constant violence with the accompaniments of machine guns and rifles. So notice that if she includes a quote, after each quote, she explains it. So we have this first quote up here, and then we have the explanation. Then she includes another quote, right? And then she has the explanation. I meant to switch. Sorry. Okay. Then she has another quote, I believe. Does she? Or no, she doesn't. All the rest of this is just explanation. I will warn you, you want more explanation than quote, and you want the majority of it to be your stuff. Even though you do want quotes, you want the majority of it to be your explanation. Think of it as a giant essay. You have your answer, you have your quote, and then you have your explanation. Yes, she put 2 quotes, but for each quote she added an explanation. And her explanation was not short. She has explanation here, and then she has explanation here. Okay? So, essentially, if you broke that down, let's go through and look at this all the way from the very beginning. First, I'm just going to write out those A's as she does, or the I'll say stuff as she does it, okay, guys? The story takes place in Dublin, and this city is described in a way that gives off depressing, suspenseful, and pessimistic images, thus showing that war is an awful thing. The author dedicates the entire first paragraph to describe the atmosphere of the story. The dark, ominous scene as Dublin lay enveloped in darkness opens the story with a sense of despair. The word darkness instantly creates a sense of insecurity and mystery in the reader's minds, and that still bugs me, as well as a suspenseful atmosphere. Excellent. So this little portion right here, that would be my explain. The sentence, which like I said, that's not the greatest. This one up here is really well done, but not that one. The sentence, the dim light of the moon shone through fleecy clouds, casting a pale light, transmits a feeling of loneliness and depression, since the moon is often thought as lonely in the high end of the sky. All right, so once again, we have an explanation. Around the beleaguered four courts, the heavy guns roared. Here and there through the city, machine guns and rifles broke the silence of the night. So she has more support. And then the last thing, she has more explanation. Okay? Now, one thing that she does do that's very important that you do in this last sentence, all these images demonstrate isolation, desolation, and the brutality formed by war. You must return to your thesis. That's what this is. Remember her thesis? She talks about the destructive nature of war. Here, she's coming back to that idea. Now, she changes up the wording because you don't want repetition, but she comes back in that last sentence to this idea. If you don't do this, I am going to write out to the side of your paper, return to thesis. And I already know I'm going to have to write it 4 million times because I have to do it every time I do these. But that's what you're going for. At the very end, that last sentence, you need to return to your thesis. Now, she continues on. Of course, the next one, she transitions from setting to the idea of irony. And she does this transition by talking about what she had previously talked about. The author not only uses setting, that's what she was just, oops, I turned my pen off. That's what she was just talking about, to intensify the evilness of war, but he also introduces several scenes of situational irony into the story to further explain the downside effects of war. She uses transition words all the way throughout. And then, of course, this third one, she goes from the setting and irony to the idea of, what was her third idea? Theme. She just wants theme overall. Okay? So if you look at her next paper, or her next page, the sniper, oh, sorry. Hold on, we got to read that first sentence. The setting and the situational irony plays an important role in building up the conflict of, that's the wrong page, isn't it? No, it's not. The sniper. However, the third person limited point of view plays the major role. Okay. This is an issue. Do you guys remember in her thesis, her talking about, did she talk about point of view? No, she didn't. Remember, she talked about theme. I don't know why I scratched through it. She talks about theme. So in this third paragraph, that's what we're supposed to be focusing on. Now, to tell you the truth, guys, this is the theme of her story. And this is also an easy fix. All she had to do was, when she got the paper written, come back to this thesis statement and get rid of theme and write in point of view. And it would have fixed any issues she had there, okay? So if you have an issue where you're getting going with your paper and as you go along, you end up veering off these ideas that you've set up, it's okay. Just come back and change them after the fact. So in her third paragraph, she actually goes off kilter, but she still sticks with her main thesis, the idea that war is terrible, and she returns to it at the end. She gives several examples. You can see her in-text citations, and she explains each. I'm not going to read this portion of it to you because we've already gone over the majority of what I want you to understand. I do suggest that you read the essay on your own. There are grammatical issues. There are, basic issues. It's a student essay. It's not perfect. But overall, it was very, very well done. And keep in mind, this was her very first essay to write as well. So you have a standard of kind of what I'm looking for. At the very end of this paragraph, she, as usual, returns to her thesis. By saying throughout the entire story of Flaherty allows the readers to see the events through the eyes of the sniper. Talking about her point of view, right? Remember up here? She was talking about point of view. And therefore, readers will understand the negative impacts of war by cleverly using a third-person limited point of view. So she returns to that thesis. Remember, the thesis was going to talk about the idea that war was destructive, that war was bad. And she returns to that idea again. And then, of course, finally is her closing. In your closing, you kind of want to wrap up everything you've been saying, review or summarize your overall ideas. Another possibility is that you could reword the intro. Okay, those ideas. You could end with a quote. Do not end with a question. All right? If you put in a question, I want you to answer it. And if you want to put in a question here, I guess that's okay, but you better answer it before you end the paper. All right? In conclusion, I would avoid this transition word because it's basic, but it's better than no transition word. By using the setting, situational irony, and the third-person limited point of view, the sniper is able to suggest to the readers the negative impact of war, more specifically, civil war. They destroy families and make brothers turn against brothers. This anti-war story truly expresses the author's... That's spelled wrong. Attitude about how war is a universal catastrophe. She turns to this idea again. Remember, she said it was destructive, but she's changed up the diction that makes the world into a sadder place with violence and killing constantly going on. Excellent. Okay? So this is what you are going for and what you're trying to do with your essay. Please make sure that you go for these things. Use this student example. I have given you this actual example on the Schoology stuff. It's, of course, not written on, but it's there for you to go through and read. Imitate it, guys. Use it. I put it there for a purpose. Use it. All right? Imitation is how writers learn to write. And it's how I suggest you learn to write as well. Okay? So I wish you the best of luck with this essay. If you have any questions, let me know. And I will talk to you in the next video or see you in school.